Greetings from Tokyo, my dear, dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very, very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to share with you some thoughts and comments that I have with regard to a very special film that was directed by the one, the only, the great Takeshi Kitano. And this was released in 1996. The name of the film is, in Japanese, Kids Return, or in English, Kids Return. Now, before I get into my thoughts and comments on this film directly, I have to pause and take a moment to talk about Takeshi Kitano at this point in time, because it's very, very important. As some of you may know, around the mid to latter point of 1994, Takeshi Kitano was involved in a very serious traffic accident, motor scooter accident. He had already finished shooting the film Getting Any, and so it was at this point, unfortunately, that he experienced this very, very serious level accident. Now, he was able to survive, thank goodness, and we understand later that if the circumstances were any different, he might not have survived. It was that serious. And so I remember my family and I were living outside of Japan, I think, at the time, but still we were able to get Japanese news and also Japanese media, newspapers, etc. And I remember when this news hit, my parents in particular were really shocked. As I say, they were fans of Beat Takeshi, and as were many other people in Japan because he was really popular. But when this news hit, this was really big. And I remember my mother in particular was just gasping. She was really shocked and worried about this. Then, some months later, Takeshi Kitano, he of course survived, and he also recovered and recuperated. And he made an appearance, a public appearance, which was, I think, his first public appearance after his accident. And I seem to recall I first saw Takeshi Kitano after his accident in a press conference that he gave, and it was televised, and there were many reporters, and he was standing there, and you could tell that he looked very different from the Beat Takeshi that we knew and we could recognize in various forms of media, including the films that he directed leading up to Getting Any. He looked very different. And I remember too here, my parents in particular were they were almost at initial glance, they were shocked because it was just a lot of information to process, if you know what I mean. And so there was this initial moment of real, almost, I guess, for lack of a better word, shock, because, and I say that in a very earnest way, because as I say, we always knew Takeshi Kitano in this kind of persona and look, and then to see him for the first time like this, not so far after his accident, he had experienced physical injury to his body, to certain portions of his body. In particular, one portion of his face experienced injury to the extent that it became a state of, it entered a state of paralysis, certain parts of his face, as far as I understand it. And so he was still engaged in the recovery and recuperation process, I think. But still, he made this public appearance. Then, of course, this aspect of his own physicality and his own look became, or he was able so successfully to have this look become part of his overall persona. And that becomes a really fascinating part, another fascinating part of this fascinating performer, artist, entertainer, and man. The fact that he was able to take this change of his physical appearance and his circumstance and use it to drive and fuel a significant part of his persona going forward is phenomenal. And that is, I'm still very stunned at how well he was able to do this. But just keep in mind, though, that at the time when this initially happened, there was still this huge sense of shock among Japanese, and I know this, as I say, based on anecdotal evidence. So, but with this, there were a lot of questions. I remember too at the time about, could Takeshi Kitano continue on with his career? Does he have to retire now? Is it over for him? And this wasn't meant as a kind of cynical thing, but these were almost earnest, sincere questions, because, again, this was a very serious accident at the time. So a lot of questions, therefore, were in the air as to whether Takeshi Kitano could continue his career as an entertainer on TV and the like. And by then, he was already established as a filmmaker. So, with those circumstances, we have, well, first of all, we had the release of Getting Any, as I say, which was a film that I understand was completed before his accident, but then it saw a general release at a point in time after he had his accident. But in terms of the post-accident Takeshi Kitano returning from his situation and coming to the world of cinema again from page one, he came up with the concept and the story and ideas and feelings and atmospheres that all became what we now know as this film, Kids Ritang. So this is in essence the first film that Takeshi Kitano is directing and making after his accident. And so I think we can not escape that set of circumstances when we look at this film, at least from a certain perspective when watching this film. And when we remember that, I think we can understand, therefore, that this film holds so much significance and weight and power in terms of its subject matter and themes and its concerns with life and dreams and hopes and ambitions and adolescence and friendship and disappointment, tragedy, and death. And when we realize these things, I think, and when we remember, again, the circumstances surrounding Takeshi Kitano's life at this time, I think we can understand how really important this film is, Kids Ritang. This, as I say, happens to be the Japanese Blu-ray that I have, and it's a film that has also been made available through other editions, not just in Japan, but in many parts of the world. And again, this is a really beautiful work, a truly delicate and very well-balanced work that involves, in essence, two adolescent characters, and we see them progress over time, growing up, and how their friendship from the latter half of high school onto adulthood, how their friendship is, what their friendship is like, and the carefree attitudes that they have, and then as they grow up, and they experience certain things and certain successes and disappointments, shall we say, how their hopes and dreams and ambitions either help or hurt their friendship, and also how then their hopes and dreams and ambitions for life plan out and pan out, and how they eventually turn out with various circumstances that we see along the way. So this is, in essence, a story about growing up, and it's a story, therefore, about life and about love and about first love and about practical jokes and just having a good time. And it's about school and about education and about society connecting with its youth. And it's about the dangers of growing up and influence, good influences in your life and bad influences in your life and the like. And so this has so much in terms of the mapping of the human heart and the human experience vis-a-vis the act of growing up. But also, it is a film that is about disappointment and tragedy and the hardships of growing up and the disappointments that we see when we are faced with the harsh realities of circumstances and situations that we have to face after we leave school, after we find a job. It's not so easy first starting out. In fact, it can be very difficult, and the struggles and how we face those struggles when we find out that as the years go on, as we age, we aren't getting any younger. And how difficult, therefore, it is to achieve what it is we want to achieve in life. And even when we find success, how can we hold on to that success? Is it going to be forever, or is it going to go away? And if that's the case, then how do we deal with that? And along the way, we get all the wonderful minutiae of human existence, the little wonderful, beautiful, quirky details that make up us as human beings. And Takeshi Kitano captures this so elegantly and so beautifully. I should say that in this charting of this story of essentially adolescence into adulthood, we have at the center these two main characters played by Ken Kaneko and Masanobu Ando. And what a brilliant combination they make. They really show the carefree attitudes of youth, all to the point of being juvenile delinquents, and they show us the bonds, the importance of the bond that they have forged between them as friends, and how that friendship is tested over time, and how they have paths that are the same at one point, but then due to circumstances that might seem at first glance to be very, very small and perhaps insignificant, we realize that even these little insignificant circumstances have drastic effects because it changes the course of their life paths respectively. And so we see them together and then diverge and then come together again and the like. And so it becomes a story that is about the two of them, either together or in parallel, and their lives as they grow, as the years pass, and as they grow, as I say, from adolescence, from essentially juvenile delinquents into adults, and all the hopes and disappointments that come along the way. And so these are really splendid performances by these two actors, and they really show a sense of wisdom and age when they need to. At the same time, they show us a sense of carefree, almost whimsical, juvenile delinquency when they need to. And so it really has a wide range of tones and significances in terms of their performances respectively. So it's absolutely spot on. And that's not all too, because this is also in essence a sort of tableau or patchwork of a film, in the sense that we have many different stories of different characters. While they might not necessarily seem to be in the focus, they might seem to be, in a sense, stories that exist in the periphery. That is one of the really brilliant things about this film, is that Takeshi Kitano so deftly and so skillfully it manages to show us all these stories that seem at first glance to be hanging on the periphery. They seem to be maybe secondary characters, but at the same time, due to the camera work and editing, and pacing of Kitano, he almost imperceptibly switches from story to story. And so when we stand back and we see the final product, we realize that we're getting stories of many characters, not just these two, although they seem to be the focus, the anchor, or the connecting tissue throughout it all. But we get many other characters and their stories, and the way that the stories are told is very artistic and beautiful and poetic. It's not wholly 100% rigid, structured, linear storytelling, because we also get a lot of gaps, we get a lot of jumps, and it's often referred to as elliptical or ellipses. In other words, we get a scene and then we'll get another scene, but there's some stuff in the middle that we didn't get as viewers. And so we have to put together all the information in our minds as to what could have happened that led from this to this. And so that means that we have a lot of work or that we have to do as viewers, because there's a lot of stuff that's not shown, but there are a lot of circumstances that are shown, which means that we already get a sense of certain stories play themselves out quite significantly, even while the camera is away, so to speak. And so when the camera returns to them, a lot has happened. And so this is to say that, therefore, this is a film that so skillfully is a story about many characters, a tableau piece, which makes it, I think, even more engaging and oh so brilliant. And speaking of that tableau, or that sort of ensemble character nature of this film, we also get a beautiful reliance on the actors, or the performers that are involved, and many of them too will be performers that we will see in the future, or we have already seen in past works by Kitano. And so, for example, we have great performers like Susumu Terajima and Ryo Ishibashi, and also Leo Morimoto and Yuko Daike and others. And so this is also to say that the ensemble is really, everyone provides these great, great and nuanced and well-timed and well-balanced performances. So this is overall a fantastically well-acted work of many different stories. That is, as I say, mapping out the human heart and human existence, and growing up, and hopes and dreams and disappointments and friendships and bonds and the like, in their own way. 100% stellar stuff. And in that, we also get what might be called the trademark stuff of Kitano films. Even though Kitano himself, or Beat Takeshi, does not appear in this film, we get a lot of the trademarks of his filmmaking and his style. So we get the use of stillness, and we get the importance of editing, in terms of editing, framing, and action, because there are still moments of action here that flash quite suddenly in bursts of energy, but presented in that Takeshi Kitano way that can be said to be very almost antithetical to the notion of action genre violence. And so that is, again, a fascinating aspect of Kitano's filmmaking. We also get the importance of framed joke humor, because still in this we have moments of levity and comedy that can be said to be the Beat Takeshi type of comedy, and these little episodes or sketches that can be seen maybe on the one hand to be sort of asides, but then we realize that they form the overall makeup of the expression of youth and adolescence. And so we get these little jokes that are very, they're visual gags, or they are maybe lowbrow humor, but it's all part of presenting the tableau at the same time as presenting that comedy aspect of Beat Takeshi. So it's doing many things at once, and that's a really, again, such a layered approach to the use and application of comedy in Takeshi Kitano's works. Incredibly well done here in this film, Kids Return. And we also get the use of montage and music. We should make note of the music provided by Hisaishi Joe Hisaishi, which is a very memorable theme, and it's a driving theme that is very suggestive of energy and passion, but also very suggestive of the real-world disappointments. And so it's another great combination of visual and music. And last but not least, I suppose we should just return to where I started this video in the first place, which was a very brief discussion of Kitano's life around this time and his accident. And I think we came to understand later that there were a lot of things that Kitano himself was thinking about and considering, and his becoming an artist and exploring other aspects of his artistic expression, due in large part perhaps, or given rise because of the fact that he was in this very serious accident at the time. And so we realize, therefore, that when we look at this film, I think we can see a lot, or we can interpret or intuit a lot of Takeshi Kitano's concerns himself, especially immediately after this accident, and ideas of looking back on the past, and because maybe this idea that life might be short. And so if we have this feeling that life is short, then we look back on the past and we see everything that we've done in our lives, especially our childhood, and maybe we see where we might have been silly growing up, made silly choices, but it was still a fun time, and remember the friends that we once knew but perhaps no longer do, and the like. Also, if we think about the severity of the accident and how close Takeshi Kitano came to death, I think we can recognize a lot of images of death and of destruction and of the building up of things and then the tearing down of things, and also the threat of violence and the sudden bursts of violence, and how the idea of death is not just an externally applied notion of death, but it could also be something that is unfortunately driven from the inside, right? Because I think there are aspects of the themes and tones of this film that explore this angle or that explore this point from many angles. So this is to say that this is a film that is very much also concerned with the exploration of disappointment and the trials and tribulations of life, real life, and of the concerns and the concept of death and destruction. And I think when we think of the concept, or when we think of the context of Takeshi's life at this time, I think it's very difficult to avoid any kind of reading that is void of at least a semblance of an understanding of Kitano's particular life circumstances at this time, which therefore makes this film even more powerful and more overwhelming an emotional experience whenever I watch it. So it is still, of course, I think a great Kitano film in and of itself. It's got those Yakuza gangster elements, it's got the jokes, it's got the comedy, it has the focus on humanity and the warmth and drama, and also the editing and sharpness of dialogue and explosions of energy. And also it falls again in this timeline because it is very significant, and it is in and of itself a kind of return, and it is an acknowledgement that Takeshi Kitano, no matter what happened to him in the recent past, Takeshi Kitano not only returns, but he is back, and he is here to stay. And he shows that oh so brilliantly in this work, Kids Return. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I really appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.